It's time for Planet Green Trees.
We have launched.
We've completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
Planet Green Trees. Attention, ladies and gentlemen. The Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
Jim, by the way, thanks for hanging in there. I know in the past when we talk too much lawyerly stuff, sometimes it gets boring to some. Sorry.
Our viewer count dropped significantly.
This is an important topic, though. It's a scandal amongst scandals. If you're listening to what happened, Neil explained how they're lying. They know about it. They investigated themselves to bury the truth.
Yeah.
It's much more far-reaching and impacts many, many more cases.
It's really important.
And whatever they're representing this entire program to be is a farce at the end of the day. And they don't care, and they're just going to lie, cheat, and they have 4 different layers of data that they review to produce one that's the product that they give to the public.
Yeah, the master deliverable.
They charge Iron Labs $250,000 for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
violation,
there's a lot of problems
like doctoring
here.
data, right? You know what I'm saying?
It can't be science if it's not calibrated. The rule for 120 days is there for a reason, and you can't go back and certify a device retroactively. That's not how that works. And to think that some printout from the machine is going to justify the fact that the calibration and checks were not completed is preposterous, unacceptable.
Did I hear him right that the judges were frowning upon them fighting the cases over this?
Well, yeah.
Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think that you had a lot of folks that,
Oh, no, they wouldn't give the discovery. You know, they were the FOIA request or whatever. They were charging a lot of money. Finally, a judge decided to order them to present it. I have a headache. Let's go. Come on, I'm so hungry. It's late.
Okay.
Look good.
Hey, you guys, tune in next
Jamie, any
week.
final commentary? Look, he's out getting stuff done, like I said. That's what he does. Yeah. What's up?
All good. Good show. Interesting. Appreciate it.
We're going to get to finish all the marijuana stuff, but we'll have to circle back.
You have a new one now. You have a mask for every every hour of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, also, lastly, Monday night, Freedom Hill, come join Jimmy the Pepper and I to fundraiser for Pete Lucido, running for prosecutor, Macomb County. Jim and I like him. We're going to go out and support him on Monday. It's actually a marijuana-themed fundraising event he was telling me, a lot of people from the marijuana community putting this on at Freedom Hill Monday night from 5 p.m. to 7:30. Yes, sir. So a lot of marijuana people are there. It's a marijuana-themed fundraising event on the Republican side.
And we know that Pete has been a big support of forfeiture reform, and it was also under his committee that the expungement bills were reported out to the Senate, which just passed this week. So I think that people should really take a look at him as the next potential prosecutor of Macomb County.
Absolutely. I think he'll be great. So, so Jim and I will be there if anybody wants to come join us.
He's a defense attorney. You know that? He was a former defense attorney.
Yeah.
That's what'll make him a great prosecutor.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think so.
We need more defense attorneys for prosecutors.
Yeah, it definitely puts a different spin to things, I think.
Yeah.
For different perspective.
It should require, like, judges to be all of them,
Right.
And it should be something that recognizes the importance of all for the system to work. Okay, enough. I'm trying to leave. I'm just
All right, we got to go.
Okay.
And now back to more Planet Green Trees. The Planet Green Trees Show.
Next topic.
Boom!
Okay.
We need a meme for the pause.
Move along. Yeah. Okay, what's our next topic?
we could talk about some shrooms, or we can talk about some federal drug testing proposals.
Shrooms, federal drug testing. Shrooms, federal drug testing. Shrooms. Let's go with the shrooms. Let's talk about shrooms. What do we know about shrooms?
Well, Ann Arbor likes them, and, we know that they're now decriminalized.
Now, what does that mean? Of course, it means that if you're interacting with the city of Ann Arbor police officer, who happens to catch you...
You got a fat stash of shrooms in your pocket.
Actually, they use the word decriminalize a lot, but it is actually a lowest level priority.
Right. It's still illegal in the city of Ann Arbor.
Enforcement.
Which means that they're not going to... It's recommended. It's a ceremonial at best.
No, it means you could be arrested for it.
Well, in addition to it, the chief of police is on record saying he supports it and isn't interested in looking after this activity and hasn't really found it to be an issue over the years. And the upcoming prosecutor has said that as far as he's concerned, that goes for the whole county. So that's a situation there, and that makes all the difference in the world if nobody's attacking it.
Except on the U of M campus, I'd say they probably have a very different opinion.
Story. That's a different story.
But they still, if a felonious behavior would be prosecuted within the Washington County, they don't have their own special, college prosecuting jurisdiction. But I'll tell you something.
Let me get this straight.
If you're going to have any real meaning to a law that lowest level, decrim, whatever it is, it only becomes that if it becomes the policy to adopt by the county prosecutor.
Yep.
They're the one that commands that. And if it is known by the law enforcement community that if they engage in that activity and submit warrants that are not going to be issued.
You come get me when the U of M police go to the Washtenaw County prosecutor and want to issue charges, and he turns them away. I would love to be wrong, but I don't see that happening.
I think you are dead right, Jim. Dead right. You will get arrested. You will be charged with a felony, and you will have to deal with that case. No. I think it's ceremonial.
Well, we can guys just see what happens when that actually happens. So we'll check it out. Oftentimes we're disappointed when we think that we got the right people in place. It seems genuine to me after talking to Ellie, I should say, a few times now, interviewing a couple of times with the Cannabis Caucus and on Jazz Cabbage. I tend to believe it, but then again, we'll see what actually happens. That's the correct.
You're listening to Planet Green Cheese. You're listening to Planet Green Cheese, episode number 485. We're calling it Steady as She Goes. There was a time when the legislature enacted the transport of marijuana law. Like the MMA said, you can possess X amount, and it doesn't have what condition is not how you're carrying it in your car. And the legislature, without amending the MMA, created another law. Oakland County did not enforce that, oddly. I mean, under certain, it was a clear interpretation, later overturned as a invalid. But the interpretation, and Pam has been proffering an interpretation of the MRTMA or the recreational law as follows: if you are outside of the limitations of an adult over the age of 21, and there is not a specified penalty articulated within that law, section 14 and 15 and 4 and 5, I think are the ones that cover it, then you default back to the public health code. So if, for example, there is not a specifically articulated penalty associated with the behavior, like smoking in public, it says you can't smoke in public, right? So it doesn't say if you smoke in public, it's a fine or a it doesn't say anything. So the interpretation of this by Pam has been, well, since there's no penalty, it doesn't articulate it, you default back to the public health code, which is, unfortunately, the way they interpreted the MMA. Like, it's immunity, and if it doesn't tell you what's wrong when you're outside of immunity, you default back to, you're back. What do you mean? I had a card. Nope, you're drug dealer. It was that kind of flip-flop. So that is one particular area. Like of course, someone would have to bring a ticket or a complaint, and the prosecutor's office would sign it. But to give people a little bit of notice, those areas, for example, there's the possessing marijuana. I mean, smoking in public. There is there's a number of different issues that come up regarding people under the age of 21, right? The laws for adults over the age of 21, and these protections, you're not prohibited, it's legal. But under 21, game on. All the same laws would apply, would be an argument and interpretation. I've heard other prosecutors. What is your thoughts on that? Just from the outset. I mean, if it's not articulated within the statutes of penalty, how should we be interpreting that for that behavior?
Well, without really getting into the weeds in a technical basis, I guess the way I would interpret it is I will always opt towards the most reasonable position. And when I say reasonable, I mean avoiding criminalizing somebody who's using marijuana. Again, I think it should be regulated, but I don't think we really need to shift from this idea that as a prosecutor, your role is to seek the absolute highest charge you possibly can to choose the charge that carries the most punishment behind it, and whether it makes sense or not. So I don't know technically how would I interpret that, but what I do know is we're going to be reasonable about it, and we don't want people to have felonies. We don't want. I'm going to avoid charging people who I do not believe are engaged in criminal behavior, whether or not the law allows me to do that or not. Because I believe that's what being smart on crime is all about. And why to be wasting all of this time and money and effort within the prosecutor's office, within the judicial system, or the criminal justice system, on activities that shouldn't be criminal, So I guess that's the way I would answer that. Like, I don't want more people to be convicted of felonies. I mean, it just makes no sense to me. Again, want to keep our streets safe, want to protect the public, but this is not about protecting the public. How is interpreting the law in a way that would allow you to charge somebody with a serious felony or even a high misdemeanor? How is that protecting the law, the people of our community? If it's a marijuana charge, how's that protecting somebody?
Do you think that those cases that were charged that may still be going on? I have a couple of, do you think that the recreational law applies backwards, retroactively to marijuana cases that have not been disposed of yet?
Yes. And I also I think people who have marijuana convictions on their record, that those should be expunged. I mean, it's just fair. I mean, why wouldn't somebody who has a possession of marijuana case and a conviction on their record that prevents them from doing something they really want to do, usually a job, by the way, why wouldn't we allow that conviction to be expunged? Again, it just makes sense to me. It just makes sense.
But are you saying that from a policy or interpretation of the law that it does have a retroactive effect on not to undo a conviction? I mean, I understand that's
if you're asking me of cases that are currently going on, but they were charged before the law was in effect, I would immediately apply the new law. Like, I don't care. I mean, that's how powerful your prosecutor is. They can at any moment decide to dismiss that charge. And why wouldn't you, if just because the day on the calendar we said it was illegal, but now we don't, and you're still going to spend efforts and resources and time and money prosecuting that? Does that make sense to you? I don't think that makes sense.
I agree.
I'd rather focus my attention on trying to, keep child sexual assault, domestic violence or, armed robbery. I mean, there are things that we really should be spending some time on. Treatment courts, so that we don't have this repeat offender constantly. I mean, there's so many more things that are just more important.
People that are growing marijuana as an adult recreation, allowed to have 12 plants, got to be in a closed lock facility. Do you think that they should have to relinquish their Second Amendment right to protect their home and house and not have a gun in the house? Do you think that, these are questions as a lawyer I get asked all the time. I'm a patient or caregiver. Now it's legal to have to get rid of my gun. Is this an issue that you see
Well, I mean, do they have that? I mean, we don't. It's just. Do we have a law that prevents people from having alcohol in their home? As a judge, I saw so many cases where people legally possessed a weapon, but because of alcohol, used it in a way that victimized people.
Sure.
But I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. Look, we allow people to legally own guns. That is not something I have ever chosen to do. Though I grew up in a household where my dad was and still is a big hunter, so there were guns in our home. But if you're following the law, I don't see how it relates. So again, I go back to what makes sense. Just because the charge is available for you to make does not mean it's the right thing to do. Because once you charge somebody with several offenses, you're really setting them down a path that you can't unwind. And by the way, they don't want to unwind because they won't even dismiss or amend the charge. So, no, I don't.
David's itching to get on. I'm gonna turn his mute button up. I just want to make a couple of comments because he's going to try to take over. But you mentioned a couple of things that I thought were really important. I want to say this: that Jessica Cooper has disappointed every lawyer, from my view, that she got to support her when she got elected. She did nothing to have any empathy or sense of compassion to the people that she brought into the criminal justice system. All the programs, as you mentioned, that allow for first-time offender things, not happening. You got to get double secret permission from some chain of custody that you can't even walk up. Very, very difficult. Most lawyers of first offense, they know they're probably going to get it impaired when they walk into court. Not in Oakland County. You got to beg and grovel for that, if that's even a thing. And that's just non-marijuana cases. And it's quite distressing that not only did she end those programs, but she misled a lot of people into thinking that she was going to champion those things. And I would also agree with you that one of the things missing, and I see it and hear it all the time, that the people that are brought into the system are damaged. Like, I don't think anyone grows up and says, I want to be a criminal. It's a matter of circumstance, economics, education, culture, lifestyle, all the things that they're born into. And they may not have the skills to survive in normal circumstance they find themselves. Now, I'm not saying I'm defending the criminal activity, but I'm saying the way you deal with it for the next round and how you get the improvement, break out of the cycle. Nothing in the court system provides that path. Very little, if any. And in the way we're dealing not yet. And the way we're dealing with a lot of these social issues, like, for example, I saw the sheriffs, their best argument why we shouldn't legalize marijuana was they do 5 home calls per day for mental health issues, and marijuana legalization is going to create more of those. My question was, why are police officers doing mental health calls at somebody's house? We are totally putting the money in the wrong spot. These are not public safety.
Exactly. And officers want tools. They want tools because they are doing those calls. I don't know what it has to do with marijuana, to be honest. In fact, I might even argue that
it doesn't make. I know it's the logic. Yeah. Listen, here's how it makes
no sense.
The prohibition of marijuana is based on a lie. So everything after that is going to be weird and not able to be explained. And that would be one of those. Okay. All right. Let's let David on. David wants to try to pin you down, I think, on your interpretation. Let's see what he's got to say. David, go ahead. I'm unmuting you. You got to behave, though. Okay. Hello, I'm Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC. I want to talk to you today a little bit about, in the context of the legalization of marijuana, some of the things that have unequivocally effectuated our culture, society, and the health of the citizens of Michigan in particular, as in when marijuana was prohibited and illegal. What I'm talking about is the opioid epidemic that currently exists in this country and also in the state of Michigan. But just so we can understand the severity that exists here, let me begin by drawing anyone's attention to the Michigan government website, where they have an entire page dedicated to the opioid epidemic and suggesting various paths for treatment and various paths for recovery and identifying it as a specific problem in Michigan. In fact, this problem in Michigan
is one that is facilitated by the number of people that have been diagnosed with severe and chronic pain. And traditionally, prior to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and certainly before legalization, the method of treatment would always be through prescription medications. Each day, at least 60 people die from opioid pain medications. Drug poisoning is the number one cause of unintentional deaths. 75% of new heroin users start on prescription painkillers. 70% of people abusing prescription painkillers reported getting them from friends or relatives. There are 4.3 million non-medical users of prescription painkillers. Almost 2 million people have prescription painkillers substance use disorders. There are over 400,000 emergency room visits for prescription painkillers annually, and research indicates 4% to 6% of prescription painkillers abusers will transition to heroin use. Prescription painkiller overdose kill more citizens than car accidents. Opioid prescriptions have tripled over the last 20 years. 12 states have more opioid prescriptions than people. In the context of this entire prescription drug epidemic, there is unidentifiable facts, data supporting why medical cannabis can and should be used and can serve as an alternative. And that in doing so and recognizing it as an option has a significant impact on the overall health of those communities that have decriminalized or legalized marijuana or medical marijuana. And this is not new news. There's supporting data that supports what I'm saying. Recently, the opioid crisis in Michigan has shown that there's been a decrease as of late since the medical marijuana program. In fact, in 2017, there were 2,033 overdose deaths involving opioids in Michigan, a rate of 21.2 deaths per 100,000 persons, which is higher than the national rate of 14.6 deaths per 100,000 persons. The greatest increase in the opioid deaths was seen in cases involving synthetic opioids. Many times I've heard the stories of patients that have been able to reduce or completely remove from their treatment the use of opioids by the use of medical marijuana. And what's important to recognize is that there's been studies that have covered and analyzed, is this true? In those states that have reduced the illegality of marijuana, does it have an impact, negatively or positively? And what we're finding is, first study coming out of, it looked at a period of coming out of the states that had legalized marijuana up until 2010. Between the years of 1999 and 2010, Journal of Medicine, JAMA, published their conclusions, which found that the opioid overdose mortality in that period of time in the states that had legalized or reduced marijuana had significantly reduced. These states being California, Oregon, and Washington had medical cannabis laws effective prior to 1999, and since then many states had legalized marijuana or at least become medical marijuana states. And what the conclusions show is a significant decrease in overdose deaths in those states over that period of time, unique to all the other states that maintain the same level or an increase in overdose deaths. This is important because the conclusions of this particular study state that the results suggest that those states that have reduced the penalties for marijuana, either for medical reasons or recreational, and where marijuana is a choice, the number of overdoses from drugs significantly decreases. In Colorado, which has been the state that has been the petri dish of all these experiments, in 2017, published again another study suggesting that the recreational marijuana is now saving lives. In fact, the study concludes, new research published in the American Journal of Public Health, that the marijuana legalization in Colorado led to the reversal of opioid overdose in the state. And after the Colorado's legalization of recreational cannabis sales and use, opioid deaths decreased more than 6% in the following 2 years. So the real reason why I wanted to talk about this was because in the coming months, as we get the rules on recreational marijuana, and while all this is taking place in the context of the opioid crisis, I think it's time that our legislatures begin to consider, what are we going to do about this opioid crisis in the context of recreational marijuana. And I think it's time for the people of the state of Michigan, legislatures, and probably via the petition process, which Komorn Law has participated in, we should be seeking to amend the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act to add to the condition those that have been afflicted by addiction or issues associated with opioid use and opioid use disorder. As effective as the statistics show that the epidemic still exists, if that treatment community would be open to what I'm suggesting, which is the concept of utilizing cannabis as a method of treating opioid addiction under the guise and under the principles of harm reduction. And that's my spiel.
We're here live at the exclusive provisioning center in Ann Arbor for the first day of recreational marijuana sales. We're waiting for the 10 o'clock open. We've got about an hour, but there's plenty of great folks here with us in line. And like I told my buddy Bob, hell, I've been waiting for 44 years for this. Another hour's not going to kill me, especially to be in the company of such excellent people who've been waiting just as long as I have. As I had pointed out earlier, this is a fantastic event, a culmination of decades of hard work, jail time, suffering, sacrifice, and a lot of positivity. So shout out to the medical marijuana community here in the state of Michigan for making this happen. Let's see here, guys. It's your boy, Uncle Jesse. There's the front end of the line before the turn into the store, exclusive provisioning center here in Ann Arbor, man. Again, I keep pointing it out because it's a celebration. This culmination of decades of hard work from some of the OGs, from a lot of advocates and activists. A lot of people have gone to jail. A lot of people have been arrested and treated like shit, had their lives devastated for simple possession. And here we are. Look at this. Look at this, baby. Look at this line. All the way down. All for the sale of adult use cannabis here in the state of Michigan. But I definitely wanted to make sure that I was up here today to document this historic occasion. As I said, man, lots of hard work, lots of trials, tribulations, sacrifices were made in order to have this day. I know I'm with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, and we were going to get up here, and then we were debating because of the weather, and then I was like, FTS, baby! We did it, right? So thank every one of you for coming out today. Thanks for making marijuana legal. Let's get it, guys. Make some noise, come on! So right on, man, right on. It's happening. It is happening here. Exclusive provisioning in Ann Arbor. Legal adult use sales. Coming to a place near you soon, right? And shout out to all the OGs who worked hard, like Adam Brooks and Michael Komorn and Rick Thompson and all these guys that have been busting their ass trying to make this happen for decades. You know, shout out, tip of the hat to them guys. So, we don't know that it's overpriced yet, but we do support local farmers. As a matter of fact, to the degree that we hope that most of the provisioning centers are utilizing the emergency rules, allowing us to buy right from the caregivers and the local farmers through the processors and the growers, man. So, you know, yes, we absolutely do support local farmers. I, for one, believe that is the heartbeat and the blood life of all marijuana in Michigan. And until our market is fully saturated and stocked, we're going to need these caregivers. So don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. So again, guys, we're here. Exclusive Provisioning Center in Ann Arbor, here for the opening day of recreational sales. Look, we're here. Yeah. Yep, we are here. Reporting for the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association on this historic day. Woo!
This is Amanda Joslin with Elevation Station, and you're watching Planet Green Trees TV.
And now I'm back on it. What's this? In the face of injustice, we stand proud and tall. Police misconduct drives us up the wall. We come in all shapes and sizes, fighting to be free. Jack-booted thuggery serves to charge our battery. We are the dildos for justice, and we are here for you. when you just don't have the juice to do what you must do. And when the police come calling cause you smoked a little grass, grab a dildo for justice and shove us up their ass. We do all the hard work at attention all the time. We may be rigid, but our justice is sublime. We vibrate with intensity, electric in our cause. When the cops don't have a warrant and they violate our laws, we are the dildos for justice, and we are here for you. When you just don't have the juice to do what you must do, and when the police come calling cause you smoked a little grass, grab a dildo for justice and shove us up their ass.
Nice.
Hello, I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and I am kicking it at Komorn's office in conjunction with Planet Green Trees. And today we're going to be talking about how cannabis affects your sleep. Yes, believe it or not, over 75% of cannabis users use cannabis for sleep. And we want to know how and why does cannabis either help you or keep you up at night. And we're going to get into cannabinoids. Cannabinoids, there are three major cannabinoids that have been therapeutically talked about and tossed around right now that helps you sleep. You have THC, you have CBD, and CBN. Now, those are three of hundreds of different cannabinoids, and the science is not there yet, and we're still studying it, but we do know there's three main players, THC, CBD, and CBN, that does help you sleep. So if you're looking for cannabis and you're going to one of the licensed stores, and if you're so lucky in your area, there is one there, you want to ask about their cannabinoid profile of how much CBN, how much THC, and how much CBD is in there. Now, the reason why these cannabinoids actually pair with our body and help us sleep is something called the endocannabinoid system. It is one of the many systems in our body. You have your circular vascular system, you have your skeleton system, you have your cardiovascular system, and there's the endocannabinoid system. So your digestive system. So all these different systems help your body function, and so does the endocannabinoid system. It's actually responsible for bringing balance to your body. Almost like a thermostat, to where if it's too hot, it kind of kicks on the air. If it's too cold, it kicks on the heat. And sometimes we could be deficient in our cannabinoids, just like we're deficient in like vitamin C or vitamin D. We can actually supplement those deficiencies in our human cannabinoids. We call those endocannabinoids because they're inside of our body, from outside cannabinoids. And some of those outside cannabinoids are from plants. They call those phytocannabinoids. And three of those cannabinoids we're talking about is the THC, CBD, and CBN. And they fit like a lock and key with our system, almost as if God intended it to be, right? So a little bit more detail about THC. I know it kind of got a bad rap in the news about it being the psychoactive component of cannabis, but it by itself is really not that effective at all. It has to have an entourage effect. But THC in conjunction with the rest of the plant matter, when it's in high concentration, it does help you sleep. CBD, it really kind of relaxes you. It kind of overall gives you rest. And then CBN, that is more powerful for the sedativeness of the plant matter. So if you consume it, and sometimes you say, "Oh man, I got a couch lock." You kind of don't want to move, or you kind of just chilling, or you sleeping for a long time. Usually, it's not because it's THC or CBD. It's really high in CBN. So those are three key cannabinoids that you want to pay attention to. And because the plant is so wonderful, it doesn't have just cannabinoids. It has terpenes as well, and it also has flavonoids. But there's cannabinoids. Don't want to get too confusing here. There's cannabinoids, there's terpenes, and there's flavonoids. And there's hundreds of each of those. And depending on all the combination of all that, it gives you a different effect. But there's 3 terpenes I want to highlight. So we talked about the cannabinoids, and also in conjunction with terpenes. And the terpenes I want to talk about is myrcene, caryophyllene, and linalool. Those 3 terpenes are also responsible for helping you relax. A lot of those terpenes, myrcene, caryophyllene, and linalool, can be found in a lot of purple strands, things that smell like a granddaddy purple or like a grape ape. Usually when you smell those, it has like a lavender purple hue to it, as if purple has a scent to it, but you kind of get the hint to like a grape purple smell to it. And then also with caryophyllene, it's a little bit more piney. That kind of reminds me of like Northern Lights. It's real piney. Those or even some of the cushions or some of the cookies could have that kind of scent to it. So your nose can tell you also, you don't have to necessarily depend on a lab test, but the cannabinoids, you can trust your instincts, trust your senses, and they can also tell you if it's good for sleep as well. So things that have like a lavender smell to it, more of like a grape purple hue to it, or smell to it, and even piney, those can tell you signals that is good for sleep. And it can be a nice nightcap for you as well. Again, I am Earl from the Cannabis Therapy Network. Check out our podcast at Cannabis Therapy Network on YouTube for more information. And also, we're kicking it with Komorn at Komorn's office.
Hi, this is retired Sergeant Steve Miller, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
Hey everybody, Tommy's on the line. You'd like to say hello? Jamie, if you want to pass that around, everybody can kind of say hi to him and maybe light up if they want. Hey. And I do actually have some official Chong's Choice California pie. All right. Let's see, let's get one of these, okay? I'm doing it for America. Where's Deborah? I
Oh, hell yeah. So Tommy Chong is on the line.
Tommy Chong. Great.
Hey, Tommy. Why don't we put a microphone up to Tommy? Hey, Rick. How about can you put that microphone up? Put the microphone up to Tommy.
Once Tommy makes his way around, because he can't.
I see. I see.
Oh, he's good. Oh, man. All right. Hold on. Oh, your friend's going to say hello.
Say real quick, it's Charlie, and I quit smoking tobacco over a year and a half ago, based on what you told me. Use joints, don't smoke tobacco, cannabis, and I want to thank you, man. I've been over a year and a half. Thank you. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
Hi, Charlie.
Who's our Charlie? Hey, what's happening?
Hey, Tommy. Peace and love, Tommy.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think Jamie did a poor job. He had one job. It's so loud in here.
All right, here we go. Mic coming in.
All right, Jamie.
I don't know if you want to try to put that up to the microphone.
Let's put that up to the mic, Jamie.
All right.
Put it right up to the mic.
Hey, man.
So we got Tommy here.
So do you have a legalization message for us, Tommy?
Yeah, you suck, you don't blow.
Good advice, some man who knows.
Unless you have to. Then you do what you gotta do.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, that's, yeah,
Tommy, are you celebrating with Michigan today? Doing anything special in Kelly?
I forgot all about it, tell you the truth. But I'm in Toronto doing a television show, so I'll definitely mention Michigan when I do the show tomorrow.
Are you doing another dancing show, Tommy? Because we love you on that one.
No, I'm still recovering from the last one, man. I'm still trying to find out why the hell I went and put myself through all that. But I'm still dancing, though.
Well, Tommy, we wouldn't be where we're at here in Michigan without the work that you've done, without the foundation that you laid, and without the way that you helped to normalize cannabis use throughout the United States of America. So the entire state owes you a big debt. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. I'd do it over again if I had the chance.
When are you coming back? When are you going to be back in town?
I have no idea, man.
Oh, this guy.
I go week to week, month to month. I don't know.
We heard great reviews of your recent performance with Cheech up at the casino here in Michigan. Good job.
I was there. It was awesome.
Yeah, there.
Oh my God, it was so much
So
fun.
Matthew Abel from Cannabis Council just joined us.
Yeah, rolling out of our seats.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, we had a great show.
Well, we're all gathered here at Cannabis Council. Matt Abel,
Matt Abel's in the house.
There you go.
Hey, Tommy. How you? Curtis has something for you. A Chong's Choice cannabis joint right there. Nice. Very nice.
Hey, does anyone know this guy? Oh, okay.
Now, isn't it weird? It's legal, but there's only certain places we can smoke it.
Yeah, not in public. You can't smoke in public at the moment.
Yeah, remember
It was weird, but we'll get there.
when it was illegal, we could smoke it anywhere.
Here right now.
I know, I see that, but you're breaking the law, probably.
No, we're in a private place. Matt, can we smoke here?
Matt,
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, congratulations, everybody.
thank you, Tommy.
Good luck. Thanks again. Enjoy Toronto.
How much fun. How much fun.
Okay, Tommy, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
How many big cheer for Tommy?
Yeah, Tommy.
But at one point, I had pointed out that how, again, part of this whole transparency, how could you permit this one guy, Andrew Clark, who was a witness or a technician, how could you permit him just to keep working between a meeting where you knew he was going to be fired and he was incompetent, for incompetence, and then, you just let him continue. And he responded, and Fondren testified, he goes, well, I had a lot of confidence that he was improving as a technician. I said, so you had confidence in him from that point on up until the point of the stop work order in January 7th. And he said, yeah. Well, we had a text message that he had sent to another sergeant in the state police, in which he said, I'm ready for Andrew to be gone. I've lost all trust in him. And there's something fishy in Huron, which is a place that he had been. So, it was like jaw-dropping, because every time he tried to sort of talk his way out of something, he ended up talking his way into another worse trap. It was like, maybe if I can step to the right here, I won't step in that trap. And then he steps into a trap with bamboo, spikes in the bottom of it. It was... So you want to talk big picture and not particulars. The big picture is this, that the state police, not just intoximeters, the state police and intoximeters treated the breath alcohol program unlike a transparent open book. They gave us a sanitized, sterilized, washed up version, washed out, cleaned up version when they came to court. And what they knew, and only they knew, was that the technicians were performing poorly, the tests were not being done timely. There were mistakes being made across the board. Sometimes the machines weren't being repaired correctly. They kept a list of bad machines. They kept a list of repeat offenders. They complained constantly about the technicians, but none of us knew that. When we, and Mike and David, I don't know if Fred is still on the phone, but when you guys would ask for records from police departments, we got a little sterile packet of 7 to 30 pages that looked like our clients, like the coffin was nailed shut, that everything was in perfect order. And the fact is that when we actually got into the records and we went through the thousands upon thousands of pages, we exposed that that is not the case. They knew the truth, and they knew that these technicians and that the program was not on solid footing. And they still sent these guys out there. And I'm telling you, every time I asked them, I said, so you were brought in to improve transparency, and here you are. I said, that's not transparent. That's not transparent. That's the opposite of transparency. At one point, he said, well, it may or may not be. And I said, well, explain how that would be transparent. Explain how keeping the information to yourself but not telling the general public is transparent. And the prosecutor objected, and the judge said, and the judge was just, that's an easy word to understand. Transparent is not a complicated word for anybody, particularly somebody with this education. So no, I want to hear the answer. And it's a yes or no. What was it, transparent or not? This is the problem. The problem is that they ran they sanitized it, they sterilized it, and then they gave us the sanitized, sterilized product that we had no way to get behind it.
Yeah, what you're saying is there's 4 different versions of the testing.
Where might we, Brother Neil, Fraser here, where might we get an adverse inference, right? Because when they take the 5th, we get an adverse inference.
Well, we're not there yet. I would say this, that if he pleads the 5th on this issue, I think that his testimony on direct examination would likely be struck, given the case law, and he would not be able to testify as a witness. It's a pretty vulnerable point.
That is incredible. Not
it's a pretty vulnerable point. The point relates to this subject. And we haven't gotten to the facts yet, but what happened when subpoenas were coming in for the technicians? With the technicians' names on it, what and how were those handled?
Hello, my name is Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLLC. Today I want to talk to you about the Fourth Amendment, or as what we sometimes discuss in my office, the challenges of being a criminal defense lawyer and practicing law in Michigan when there is no Fourth Amendment. Why do I say this? Well, this topic comes up quite a bit in our practice as it relates to medical marijuana patients and caregivers that are cultivating marijuana for medical use, and the interplay that it has with the Fourth Amendment, which protects citizens against unlawful searches and seizures. Michigan has not been advanced on the protections of citizens in their home or vehicles or traveling, walking around on foot. And this is exemplified in the way in which the courts have dealt with medical marijuana patients and caregivers who are cultivating marijuana and the Fourth Amendment. The one case on point, and this is important to understand the issues that interplay here, rejects the premise that a patient or caregiver who is cultivating marijuana and is authorized by the state to do so has any protections above and beyond the existing law prior to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. What do I mean by that? Well, traditionally, law enforcement officers, when they're seeking a search warrant, need to provide probable cause of a possible crime taking place at a location that they want to search and seize property in. They will articulate in the affidavit the evidence or observations that they've made. These usually include things such as snow melting on the roof. They'll do a trash pull. They will discuss how there's air conditioning units or the electric bills are high or the windows are blacked out. They're all traditional things by which you'd find in any affidavit regarding an investigation for quote-unquote illegal marijuana cultivation. Now, all those things that I just mentioned are things that are authorized by the state for patients and caregivers to do and engage in. In other words, the definitions outlined in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and the specific protections for the medical use of marijuana unequivocally include making the smell of marijuana, burning energy to grow your plants, the snow melting on the roof, and even discarding things associated with that. However, when given the chance to rule on this and protect the class of people that we're talking about here, the Court of Appeals instead decided to punt. In the only case addressing the Fourth Amendment to date, in the matter of the state of Michigan versus Anthony Brown, the Court of Appeals said no. Law enforcement does not need to determine whether a suspect or a house that they want to get into is a patient or caregiver. First, because purportedly they can't get into the registry because it's private to learn these things. And secondly, as has happened in many cases by our courts, the court has found that the MMA did not alter, amend, or change in any way the public health code, which are the laws that prohibit any marijuana activity. Instead, the MMA only provided, according to these opinions, protections for a limited group of people, small class of people. And that's the status of the law to date, and the only case law that commands this area. And that's why we say that it's oftentimes difficult to practice criminal defense when there's no Fourth Amendment, because the Court of Appeals has completely ignored the state authorized behavior as being something that is lawful and has allowed rulings to stand where that same authorized behavior is deemed probable cause of a crime. Why is this important? Because, as we find in our practice, there's often times where there are police encounters with individuals that are patients and caregivers. The information I just described is very important for you to understand why the advice I am purporting you should consider is a proper path when you have a police encounter. Now, because of the fact that law enforcement has no duty to determine whether or not you're a patient or caregiver, as they may be investigating you because of a tip that it smells or some other occurrence that brings the attention of the police to your house. If you have an encounter with them, the most important thing for you to understand is that you should not make any statements other than what I'm about to tell you. That is to say, when you have law enforcement encounters and you're being investigated and you sense that they're trying to extrapolate information from you, or it's even a friendly encounter at a road stop, remember, anything you say will be used against you. So use your words carefully if you are going to, but best bet is to not say anything at all. Now, if you have this kind of encounter at your residence, where the police knock on your door and tell you that they're there because they got a complaint about marijuana, the first thing I advise you to do is remember, don't talk, don't say anything, other than the following. You should be prepared and have near the front door and have accessible to you at times when this kind of event is taking place, to be prepared to hand to the officers that may be there at the door your medical marijuana patient or caregiver cards. While you're doing this, you should be contemplating the ability to record this event. Maybe turn your phone on and record, take a picture of it. But the way it should go down is conceptualizing, being able to take the cards, hand them to the officer, and videotape or take a photograph of that particular transfer. This is evidence you're collecting of your compliance. And when you hand it to them, you should say the following words. My lawyers told me not to talk without him or her being here. And my lawyers told me I shouldn't answer any questions. My lawyers told me I should not consent to any searches without a search warrant. My lawyer also told me to give you my medical marijuana cards so you know that I'm a patient or caregiver and in compliance with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. And that is it. Nothing else should be said. You should leave this event with a photograph or hopefully a movie of some kind And that is how you should respond to encounters where there's a knock, what's often described as a knock and talk, or the police appear at your front door. Also important is, do not let them into the house under any circumstances. Speak to them through the door, and if you're going to hand them any documentation, you should step outside, closing the door behind you, making it clear that you are not giving them any entry or access to your house. Additionally, and most important, is the following. If you are a patient or caregiver and have an encounter with law enforcement, understand that they have no legal authority whatsoever to do a compliance check. More and more we are hearing that drug task forces are appearing at people's residences and getting consent to search the residence under the pretext that they're going to do a compliance check. Understand that this is a falsity and a method by which law enforcement is using to get into the location, which is a false premise. Let me make it clear. There's no legal authority for drug task forces to determine your compliance or check for your compliance as a medical marijuana patient or caregiver possessing plants. Don't let them fool you and consent to this search. It will not work to your advantage in most situations. And finally, this advice is advice that is gleaned from experiences that I've had with the law enforcement community as it relates to patients and caregivers. There are some, I understand, positive law enforcement encounters that exist and have existed. My advice is not based on those scenarios. They're based on the people that have called their office and have had negative interactions with law enforcement that resulted in felony charges and what patients or caregivers believe would be behavior that would be immune from arrest, prosecution, and forfeiture in the seizure of all your property. Instead, they found themselves in court. Based on those calls, those clients, and those experiences is where the advice that I'm proffering you to consider, that's where it comes from. And just to summarize, I don't believe we're at a state yet where we're trustworthy of the law enforcement community to, or give them the authority to be the judges of compliance. The last 10 years, they've been very slow to come around to recognize some of the basic, fundamental principles of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, specifically things like what a plant is, what's usable material. I don't think that they've earned the right yet to be trusted to come in and determine compliance and let people fix or come into compliance yet. I think what we're seeing, and the reasons why I'm proffering this advice is because more and more, if you are out of compliance, the way that it is reacted to by law enforcement is they deem that you are not immune from marijuana behavior. They will felonize you and they will seize your property. Those are the circumstances that are in play. And my advice at this point, until evidence proves otherwise, that advice should be given differently, is that when you have these law enforcement encounters, remember, number one, don't talk to the police. Number two, be ready for these encounters. Have your cards available at the front door or where you would have this encounter with law enforcement, or have them on your person, and be prepared to hand them to them with the following words. My lawyers told me not to speak to you. You're not allowed in unless you have a search warrant. My lawyer told me to give you these cards and let you know that I'm a patient caregiver that's in compliance. If you follow these directions, the law enforcement community or the people investigating should understand that they don't have, or what they believed was an investigation that may garner probable cause, that they don't have it. That exchange, the way I describe it, should minimize their thoughts and or concerns regarding a crime taking place. In other words, the smell of marijuana, if that's a crime which is deemed so, or suspicion of a crime, that is alleviated upon the presentation of the card. And the probable cause that they may have thought that they had to get a search warrant would not be there if, in fact, the officers are honest, and you would have the picture and photograph or small video, short video of the encounter where you handed them the cards. And they would have no reason to think that there's just a smell of illegal marijuana, when in fact, after this encounter, they would know that you are a patient or a caregiver, thus vitiating what would be suspicion of a crime. I think following those principles and being ready for them is advice that will help you in the long run and hopefully create a positive police encounter, or at least create a situation that should the police respond negatively to you, you'll be in the best position to defend the search or attack the search as illegal. My name is Michael Komorn of Komorn Law. Thanks for listening.
Respectful of my time, because they don't give me much time here. You can walk around the crowd a little bit and you know for me.
It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the stir for breathing air. It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the stir for breathing air. Set him free, let him be, breathing air like you and me. What's the judge to do? What else can Judge Columba do? We got to set him free. This whole place went nuts. If he was a soldier man, shooting gooks in Vietnam. If he was CIA, selling dope and making hay, he'd be free, breathing air like you and me. What's the judge do? What else could Judge Columba do? Well, we got to set him free. And sure enough, that was Saturday, and then next Monday, John Sinclair walked out of jail. And the Supreme Court issued an opinion in People versus John Sinclair that said, it's cruel, it's unusual, it's arbitrary, it's irrational, it's capricious, and it cannot be the law in the state of Michigan that we treat marijuana the same way we treat opioids. And they set him free. Hi, I'm Jeff Frazier. I'm one of the attorneys at Komorn Law in Michigan. And on behalf of poet John Sinclair, some doctors, some pharmacists, some organizations, we're suing the Michigan Board of Pharmacy to finally, once and for all, to remove marijuana from the Michigan list of controlled substances. John Sinclair was and is a poet provocateur, an adamant opponent and protester against America's involvement in the Vietnam War and all the bombings. He was organized together with Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin and the Black Panthers guys. And, he organized against the war, and in his words, we were protesting the war and we were advocating for the legalization of marijuana, all the while smoking vast quantities of it. We ought to do something about finally getting this plant off of the controlled substances list. We have law where the state of Michigan is licensing the medical use of marijuana. At the same time, it says under the Board of Pharmacy says under the Controlled Substances Act that it is still a controlled substance. And not only is it still a controlled substance, it's still a Schedule I controlled substance. And being Schedule I controlled substance means that it is contraband per se, and that its mere presence is evidence of a crime, and it justifies the raids. The Michigan State Police spend 40% of their resources going after marijuana that is allowed for medical use, is licensed by the state, is now been voted into law by the people of this state to be legal for adult use. And yet it's still 40% of the police budget, still 40% of the prosecutor's daily load, it's still 40% of the Michigan State Police Crime Lab daily load. And it's still Schedule I, which justifies the stops, the searches, the seizures, and more importantly, the raids. And that means men with AR-15s and ski masks going in where men, women, and children and dogs and grandparents, are quietly sitting there watching TV. And because the neighbor complained of the smell of marijuana coming from a basement window, these patients or caregivers and now any citizen in the state is allowed to grow. The continued placement of marijuana on the Michigan State list of controlled substances is just simply absurd.
Lawsuit arose from, it has a lot of history. And a few months ago, we were talking about how absurd it is that Michigan both has marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance, which theoretically has no medical use, and also we're licensing facilities to sell marijuana as medicine. And we all believe that those two cannot stand together, that they are incompatible. And so here we are today.
It's got a medical legal identity with huge bureaucracies of the state supervising and charging a minimum of $66,000 for you to open a dispensary to sell this weed that last year you could have been arrested and sent to prison for by the same people. This whole thing is just totally horseshit, if I could use that.
That's a technical term.
It's hard to even fathom. And for 80 years they've been locking people up and taking their possessions and harassing and terrorizing us as citizens because we like to smoke weed. So I'm proud to be part of this effort. I want to be part of every effort to completely remove the police from our lives as regarding to marijuana.
All right.
They got nothing at all to do with marijuana.
Well, in 2018, when the administrative rules were supposed to be implemented to provide a mechanism for people applying to get licenses, the state at the same time acknowledged the principle that Michigan, to avoid a state of emergency so patients couldn't get their marijuana, needed to formulate emergency rules. So, first of all, when the legislature passed this law, they acknowledged that the state would be in an emergency
if people didn't get marijuana. That is not how you talk about a controlled substance. Secondly, the way that they dealt with it was that they allowed caregivers, who they vilified for the last however many years, to supply these places where patients would get cannabis. This is not a controlled substance. This is not how controlled substances are provided for patients. And as the year went on, they tried to move to their regulated system that's been created, which wasn't working. They had more caregivers, extended the rules, and identified the names of caregivers this last go around that this method of people growing in their basement are going to provide, or wherever are going to provide to be the source for patients. And that's the state of affairs right now in Michigan. This is not a controlled substance.
Hi, I'm Steve Miller. I'm retired sergeant with the Canton Police Department. Had just under 25 years of police work. On behalf of John Sinclair, our law firm, Komorn Law, along with Matt Abel and his law firm at Cannabis Council, are suing the State of Michigan Pharmacy Board to have marijuana removed off the controlled substances schedule. So today I'm here to tell a story. We're going to call it the 7 degrees of separation between Steve Miller and John Sinclair, and linked through one fairly famous politician, Mr. Perry Bullard. 20 plus years ago, when I was a young detective, I investigated a case in which Mr. Bullard suffered a tragic death. He was a great politician to have. I had to investigate that death. Mr. Bullard wrote a Supreme Court opinion that got Mr. John Sinclair out of prison for the 2 joints at that time. Also during this time, when I was a young detective and investigating Mr. Bullard's death, I had the opportunity of meeting one Michael Komorn. We had a case in common. And over the course of that case, he was the defense attorney. We actually did what most think is impossible, and he and I became good friends over the course of that case, and I developed a lot of respect for him at that time. Michael Komorn in and around that same time bringing me to the future where Mr. Sinclair and Mr. Bullard are connected through a Supreme Court opinion written by Mr. Bullard and setting Mr. Sinclair free. Fast forward to now, we have a pretty significant lawsuit against the State of Michigan Pharmacy Board right now. This would be a major thing. If we prevail in this lawsuit and marijuana is removed off the controlled substances schedule, then that will be a major, major thing, and I will feel like I've been a major part of history. Michael Komorn, and through his law firm, has really made significant impacts against the war on drugs, especially as it relates to marijuana, and fighting for what's right in this case and for medical marijuana patients and caregivers all over the state. He is a pioneer in the legal world in marijuana law, and he needs to be commended for all the good work he's done in this area to try and get things right.
Hopefully we'll get our hearing. If not, then we'll fight it out in the Court of Appeals and ultimately back to the Supreme Court that originally spoke in the case of John Sinclair back in 1971. It's time for, this absurdity that has forever lived at the heart of the drug war to be done with. And the way to do that is to take marijuana off the controlled substances list altogether. It's no longer to be policed, it's to be regulated.
X-ray 22 for an alarm.
6 Kilo, I have a stop off on Chatwood in a minute. 1080 for marijuana production. We're going to be Lake Turnwood, west of Beach.
Really what's going on is that this is bigger than the Medical Marijuana Act. This is about democracy, this is about freedom, this is about your legislatures changing the law that has been voted for by a majority of the people. And now what you're finding is that a small group of people are trying to now push that law back and change it after it was done so in a lawful mean. They do not understand what's going on in the medical marijuana community. And what's more is they don't really see the types of abuses that are going on by law enforcement. You have a group of law enforcement agents that are completely eradicating these protections. Why? Because they don't like the law, because you don't believe that medical marijuana works for people, because you think that they should be taking prescription medications instead, or because they don't look like what you think a medical marijuana patient should look like. And it's not for anyone but them and their doctor to decide what kind of medicine they're going to use. And once that's decided, they should have access, safe access, consistent access to the best medication that they and their doctor have decided that they want to use. Instead, we're finding just the opposite. You're having legislatures dictating who should be taking the medicine. You're having legislators dictate what doctors should do before deciding who should take what particular medicine. Why? Because it's cannabis. Yet here we are in 2011 trying to create laws that limit safe access to cannabis for people that deserve it. The people of the state of Michigan believe that sick people should be entitled to get marijuana to treat their condition. The bills that are being presented don't even acknowledge this. They're trying to eradicate something that the people of the state of Michigan wanted, and they're trying to keep sick people that deserve their cannabis, deserve their medicine, from getting it.
This is video recorded by the office of attorney Michael Komorn, who's also the president of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. He says it shows stuff seized from his clients and held by police. His clients paid him thousands to represent them, and after years of waiting, got their belongings back.
Why is the state engaged in this kind of activity? The idea that the government just takes it, and by the fact that they're possessing it, it becomes theirs, and the burden shifts to the owner of it to prove that the property is not guilty or that they acquired it in a lawful way, is against the grain of what we've learned and what citizens expect from our legal system.
Ron Hammond and his son John say they believe it is all about making money for law enforcement. When medical marijuana became legal, they applied for cards to be caregivers and patients.
Well, I thought everything was legal.
Everything that you're supposed to do, I followed all the weights and all the counts and everything like that, but it doesn't matter to them when they come in. They just take everything and say, gotcha.
Michael Komorn argues it hurts justice. He says he takes on clients who can't afford his services because their assets are seized. John and Ron Hammond say they believe they will be found not guilty, but in the meantime, they are being punished.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need.
A massive crackdown on marijuana traffickers as police move in and raid several homes and businesses and warehouses.
Police raid a home on Detroit's west side, turning the place upside down, searching for illegal drugs.
But the homeowner says that the officers targeted the wrong house.
This department's drug unit was actually under investigation, along with quite possibly some detectives and leaders, that some money was missing, that it could in fact been misappropriated.
Detroit police raids officers in full tactical gear, racing up with high-powered assault rifles, with officers as backup.
Now Detroit Police Internal Affairs are investigating a huge and dangerous mistake.
Yeah, cops staged a drug raid only to discover they were about to bust their own undercover officers.
It was clearly unusual to see evidence bags being taken out of a police headquarters building instead of into it. Evidence that investigators believe will support allegations of misconduct by Romulus detectives and officers.
Being allegations revealed against Detroit police narcotics officers as part of a federal lawsuit.
And I saw the AK-47 on the back of her head. 6 men came in behind that and screaming and yelling, "Get on the floor, get on the floor." They did not say they were Detroit police officers. They took me and my wife in separate rooms, threatened us.
Sources say the undercover cops who were here last night are working what is called a push-off, where they can make arrests and seize vehicles that can generate revenue.
Civil asset forfeiture is a legal process in which law enforcement officers take assets from people suspected of involvement with crime or illegal activity without necessarily charging the owners with wrongdoing. Michigan's civil asset forfeiture laws are some of the most egregious in the country. In March 2010, the Institute for Justice released Policing for Profit, the Abuse of Civil Asset Forfeiture, the most comprehensive national study to examine the use and abuse of civil asset forfeiture, and the first study to grade the civil forfeiture laws in all 50 states and the federal government. Only 3 states received a B or better. Michigan received the lowest score possible, a D-. Americans are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but civil forfeiture turns that principle on its head. With civil forfeiture, your property is guilty until you prove it innocent. The report chronicles how state and federal laws leave innocent property owners vulnerable to forfeiture abuse. These laws encourage law enforcement to take property to boost their budgets. The report finds that by giving law enforcement a direct financial stake in forfeiture efforts, most state and federal laws encourage policing for profit, not justice.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Komorn. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I've been practicing for about 25 years. I'm also the president of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. I want to thank the chairman and the Judiciary Committee and Representative Lucido for championing this important cause that, from my personal experience as a lawyer, has been quite brutal on the citizens of Michigan.
The purpose of the law was to protect people from arrest, not create nuances that, exceptions that could pull people out of their immunity. And that is unfortunately what has been happening. You wouldn't see an increase in arrests of marijuana 14% every year and 15 million in proceeds when you have a state law that was intended to stop that behavior. I mean, the legislature in 2016 amended the law retroactively. I've never seen this before in 25 years of practicing law, retroactively to cure what the legislature has been unable to do, which is to protect patients from getting arrested. I mean, that's a declaration that the law has not worked with its original intention. And the statistics show it, because you've got an increase in funds and an increase in arrests. So the concept of that you're speaking of it being, Schedule 1 is absurd. This legislature just passed a law where they're going to receive tax money for selling these things that this argument would lead to that my client was possessing, and it's contraband. May as well be kiddie porn. I mean, that's the analogy.
Why do you think they started paying attention to you guys?
Because I got rid of a patient.
She wasn't happy.
Well, I went to the store, come back, and there's people running in and out of the house. And then I found out that they almost shot my girlfriend because she's hearing impaired. Because she was the only one in the house when they showed up.
Just medical marijuana growers, and we just have our patients, we have our cards, we're trying to do everything legal and right, and they just came in and destroyed our whole lives, pretty much. Talking with my lawyer, I said, can we get this thing moving along? Nothing's happening. They got a hold of everything. What am I supposed to do? He said, well, let's start rattling them a little bit and see if we can get them to release some of your stuff. As soon as we did that, that's when they dropped warrants out on us, which they didn't tell us about the warrants.
I thought everything was legal. How can you pay for the right to do it, and then they come in and say you can't? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you have guns pointed at your face, and they put you down on the ground and, make you feel like a criminal. And for what, I have no idea. I was doing everything that the law said I'm supposed to do, so.
Your kids' toys, did they touch any of that stuff?
I did end up coming up with a couple Xbox games missing, and like Michael said, he said, go through all your stuff, go through your jewelry and stuff, look at all that stuff. I said, well, they took all my money. Like, I just cashed my paycheck.
I did too.
It was like $900 in my pocket. They're like, we're taking that. I'm like, that was my paycheck, man. And they were like, yeah.
And that's all on record.
And then I had a little bit of money that my mom gave me stashed away in a little tiny safe, and they were like, what's this? And I'm like, it's a little bit of money that my mom gave me. It's not even $2,000. They're like, that's drug money. They took that. I'm like, they're like, what's in the safe? Open that safe. I'm like, all right. So I opened up the safe. They're like, oh, you got guns in here. They're like, jackpot. I'm like,
but that was
come
my
on.
property.
It wasn't even on that. It was in a whole different house.
Do you think people realize that the government can take your stuff and hold it for years without charging you with a crime?
I had no clue.
Were they asking you about anything that had to do with marijuana, or they're just asking you about the motorcycle?
That's it, just a bite.
What does that tell you?
They want money.
Did they seize your retirement accounts too?
Yep.
So, I mean, you got that, talk about where you got that money from, you know.
I worked for it. It's for my retirement.
So, it, you know, because they're supposed to seize assets that are connected to making money from drugs.
Nope, that all comes through my company.
What do you want to say to lawmakers? What do you want to see changed?
Play the game fair. That's why we have laws.
In Michigan, law enforcement receives all proceeds of civil forfeiture to enhance law enforcement efforts, creating an incentive to pursue forfeiture more vigorously than combating other criminal activity. The report says Michigan multi-jurisdictional task forces work extensively with district attorneys and police departments to forfeit property, resulting in more than $149 million in total forfeiture revenue from 2001 to 2008. Here's how policing for profit works. The federal government provides grants to drug task forces to go get drugs, but does not give grants to detectives who work to find murderers or rapists. Civil asset forfeiture laws allow cops and prosecutors to forfeit cash, assets, and property of anyone accused of drug or prostitution crimes. They don't have to obtain a conviction or prove in any way the defendant was committing a crime. Local law enforcers also keep all proceeds, sharing with federal agencies. This combination of free money with no consequences fosters a generations-long dependence on forfeiture and grant dollars in most, if not every, local Michigan police force. This dependency dictates enforcement to areas of profit, mostly drug and prostitution consensual crimes, rather than violent crimes with actual victims.
They threatened with over 40 years in jail for myself. For my son, it was about 20 years. And again, this is for the same activity that they're now licensing, the state of Michigan is licensing for. I know partially why it happened, because I was opening a doctor's office across the way on the other side of town. The city did not want me to do it. They said it wasn't acceptable use. But there wasn't anything in the ordinance or the code that said that it was not a permitted use. So I spoke with the city attorney, and she said, "You're not opening." Shortly thereafter, within a week's time, we were raided. When I was at the jail in Canton waiting to be booked, the lieutenant came over to me and she said, "You must be Amanda Joslin." And she held out her hand. I stood up to shake it. She said, "You're the one that wanted to open the office on the other side of town." I said, "Yep, that was me." And she said, "Well, I guess you got your answer."
Proponents see civil forfeiture as a powerful tool to thwart criminal organizations involved in the illegal drug trade. They also argue it is an effective method since it allows law enforcement agencies to use these seized proceeds to further battle illegal activity. The warrants executed in search of forfeiture often violate the civil rights of Michigan families who have no criminal intent.
You know, we still got to match up the cards with number of plants, or that's what our aim is. And I'll be clear with you, if we don't get that, we will get the search warrant and we will go about this differently. Obviously, we've done already 4 today.
It becomes arbitrary because when he shows you that he's got medical marijuana cards,
it then warrants and justifies his ability to have the smell of marijuana, to possess plants, all the things that may have made you suspicious of a crime.
But possess a certain number of plants.
Yeah, but you don't.
Which is something that we would like to.
I understand, but you don't have any evidence that he's not in compliance, and in order to get a search warrant, you would have to establish that he's doing something illegal. If you know that he's allowed to have smell, that smell's not illegal. If you know that he's allowed to have, electric bills or the snow melting on his roof or whatever, then it's not illegal.
I guess why, if you're going to give him that advice, sir, why do you want to talk to me?
Because I was hoping you'd be reasonable in knowing that he's got medical marijuana cards. I don't think the act...
I'll tell you what, I gave you my position. I'm going to give you back to your client. You can advise your client however you wish, okay?
Why are drug task forces, why are SWAT teams still investigating our compliance with the Medical Marijuana Act? Why are Michigan drug task forces still obtaining warrants to kick in our doors and terrorize families and take whatever they want based on the probable presence of marijuana 8 years after the Medical Marijuana Act? We've been asking the wrong questions for a long time. So everybody needs to be asking themselves the following questions. Where are my local police resources being held? Like, how many detectives are assigned to the homicide and the violent crime squads? What kind of resources do we have directed to those? How many butts are in chairs doing research and going and getting the real bad guys? And how can we begin to have honest conversations about public health and safety, how the drug cops need to be redirected to these violent crimes, get them funding, and leave us alone, leave these families alone otherwise.
And I don't want to come off as as being totally anti-police, but the drug task forces are the ones that are bringing in $15 million this past year, $20 million in years past, $26 million I think in 2013-14, consistently. This is insane. There's no reason in the world that a budgeted state agency, after being given the resources to perform their yearly tasks working for the state of Michigan, goes out and then earns another $26 million. That is a machine. There's not that many businesses that do that in Michigan, right? But here they are. And what's the scheme? The scheme is they're just robbing citizens who don't get due process on nuanced technicalities. And I don't know, it's been rather a terrible time and a real shame to the state of Michigan, the way that they've handled this.
Hello and welcome to Planet Green Trees. I am Earl, the host of Cannabis Therapy Podcast. And I'm here to give some information about cannabis so that we can have a well-balanced understanding of cannabis. And today we're going to talk about how to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. Yes, by the end of this episode, you should be able to identify if a plant is male and female, and why does it even matter, right? Cool. How to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. Now, I am live from Komorn's office. If you hear Komorn's voice, it is because he is on a rant with a client, and that is okay. But we're going to push through this. Now, how to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. Tommy, you can throw that first image up there. Thank you very much. Genetics. My cannabis plant, believe it or not, female plants and male plants have different genetics and different chromosomes. Males have an XY chromosome and females have an XX chromosome. Now from the naked eye, you can't really tell that, but just look eternally and understand there is a genetic difference between male and female plants. Now, you can really tell the difference between the plants by their genitals. Believe it or not, plants have genitals. And for males, it's more pistils, and for females, it's more stamen. And you can tell the difference. There's an image up there right now. You can see the pistils look a little different than what the female stamen looks like. And almost those pistils will eventually give you a sign as to how they are going to be a male. And I'm going to show you that picture pretty soon. But usually, you can't really tell the difference between a male or female until about at least 2 to 4 weeks into that plant's growth cycle. And sometimes you won't even tell the plant difference between male and female until about 2 weeks into the flower cycle. So just because you saw during the vegetative cycle, and that's the vegetative cycle, that's when it's just growing. It's not flowering, it's just growing tall. And depending if you're on the indoors, that means you're giving it at least 18 hours of light, okay? Up to 24 hours, because it's only 24 hours in a day. And then, at some point, you flip it to flowering, which is 12 hours of lightness, 12 hours of darkness. And you could have been vegging for 6 weeks, and it looks like it's still a female, but then 2 weeks in the flower, bang, you find a male. And what do? We're going to talk about that soon. So, some other ways, we're going to put up another picture for me, Tommy, is how you can identify signs of a male plant. And the most common way of finding out if this plant is a male is by the pollen sacs. Yes, those pistils now turn into some kind of pollen sac. And literally, it looks like little balls, like a plant has balls. And you can tell that those are there by looking right in between the pistils, or right at the point of the branches. You see little pistils. You also can see little ball sacs. And you look at that image, you can kind of see it right there too. Another sign, say you do not sight it. Remember, I told you in 2 to 4 weeks of its growth cycle, you can tell if it's a male or female, but sometimes you can't really tell until it's in the flowering stage. But one of the signs you could tell is during the veg stage. If you don't see the pollen sacs, it's growing fast and it's growing taller than all of your other plants. Most males grow a lot taller and faster than females. So that's a sign to kind of like, let me watch this guy. Another one is it grows more straight. A lot of females tend to be a little bit more bushier. So if it's growing more straight up, taller, faster, another sign it could be a male. And then less flowers. Typically you can't tell that until it's in the flower stage, and if you're really seeing less flowers at that point, it's probably too late to take it out of your grow room, and you may as well just ride it out. And I'm gonna talk about later, well, it's okay. Male plants are okay. We as males should be accepted in society as plants. And then also tighter clusters. So you see a lot of male plants have a little bit tighter nodes. Females a little bit more spaced out, and male. So those are some signs that you can, and tricks that you can use to identify a male. And the reason why people or growers prefer females over male plants, well, females typically produce more THC. They're typically more potent. But typically, if you separate the females from the males, something called sensibililia happens, and the plants become more plumper, because the plants, if the females are getting plump, looking for pollen, is not there, and they just keep getting more plump, and that gives you a higher yield. So that's a lot of the reasons why growers will separate females and males. And also, females have a natural higher cannabinoid and terpene profile. Cannabinoids, I talked about briefly. You can always go to our Cannabis Therapy podcast to look at other episodes that explain the endocannabinoid system and how it pairs with cannabinoids. But in a short sentence, cannabinoids are hundreds of different compounds, chemical compounds in a plant. There's over hundreds of different cannabinoids, such as THC is one of the most popular cannabinoids. CBD is a popular cannabinoid. THCA, CBN. So there's a lot of, and there's hundreds of those. And then there's also terpenes. Terpenes really give you the aroma, the smell. of it as well. And tied in with some of the flavonoids, it can also give you certain tastes as well. But when you pair those cannabinoids with those terpenes, you get effects. Some can make you more sleepy, some can make you more calm, some can make you horny, whatever it is, all those chemical compounds, it's like an orchestra. All of it plays. It's not just the flute, not just the drums, it all plays like a symphony. So females have a higher concentration of a lot more cannabinoids and terpenes. And then also, they do not produce seeds. Typically, they do not produce seeds. On an average, unless they're stressed out. So in seeds, which gets me to the point of it's okay to have some male plants, because seeds right now kind of, there's been a stigma that if cannabis had seeds, that it's kind of low quality cannabis, and that typically came from the history of, when it was in the early days of Prohibition, a lot of cannabis coming from Mexico or these areas where they kind of had brickweed, where it's just growing out in the wild. There's male and females that pollinate each other, and it's really kind of low quality weed put in bricks sent over here, and people saw that association with, well, it has seeds, must be that brickweed. But you can grow high quality cannabis even though it does have seeds. Males, you can even hemp itself, go and craft hemp. Males, you can still produce and give the same love and care as you would just females, and it will taste just the same, and it tastes just as good. So you don't have to just kill your whole crop. You can still ride that out, grow that, give the same love and care, and it still will be consumable. But the last thing is kind of like watermelon. If, say, genetic watermelon that was modified could produce no seeds, and then you have natural watermelon with seeds. Say it wasn't genetically modified, it was actually, there is male or there's female watermelons that doesn't have seeds, and there's male watermelons that do have seeds. End of the day, they both will taste like watermelon. And I get how having a male watermelon with seeds can get annoying, trying to, spit out the seeds and picking them out. But at the end of the day, you still could enjoy the watermelon and get to the juiciness. Ha! Cool. So where to start if you're looking to grow and say you do want female seeds? One of the ways is you want female plants, one of the ways is you can source auto-flowering seeds. And pretty much what an auto-flowering seed is that no matter what the life cycle is, within 8, 10, 11 weeks, this plant is going to flip into flower and be ripe and ready to harvest. But just because it's auto-flowering doesn't mean that it's not a male in there as well. So you still got to watch it. You still got to watch it for 2 to 4 weeks. Still got to watch it as it begins to auto-flower. But a lot of auto-flowering seeds have a higher percentage of being female. Another higher percentage of being female seed type or category is feminized seeds. Feminized seeds, if you recall what I said earlier, is that, well, females can produce seeds. What? Yes, females can produce seeds if you stress them out. And it could be because it was too hot, it was too cold, too much, it was too less of humidity, too much humidity, too much light. It's an art to growing, and if we don't keep that balance, that female plant could get stressed, overfeeding it, underfeeding it, the soil. So all these things, how much wind is blowing on it. So it could get stressed out, and it could produce seeds despite you not having any male plants in the garden. So when that female produces seeds, believe it or not, those are feminized seeds. And it is about a 90% chance that that seed from that female plant that was stressed out is also a female. So there's people actually go into business and actually stress out plants on purpose to produce feminized seeds so that people will pay more for that higher guarantee that their seeds or plants will actually be females. So that's feminized seeds. But you still got to watch them. There's a 90% chance. So if you're really trying to keep them separate, you still want to watch them for at least 2 to 4 weeks into flower. And then the really sure way to understand if you're really trying to keep your males separate from your females and you really want just females for all the benefits we talked about earlier is cloning. If you cut a clone from a female plant, 100% of the time it is going to be also the same genetic of that clone that you make. Just as if you cut a clone of yourself, most likely if I cut a clone of Earl, that other person will look and act just like Earl. It would not be a female Earl unless this is a Star Wars movie and something happened where that happened. But This is not Star Wars. This is reality. We're in Detroit, Michigan. That does not happen yet. So that is how to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. I hope by listening to this, you got a well-balanced understanding of cannabis and cannabis products, and you learned something that you can spread. Please like and share the Planet Green Trees podcast with a friend, and also the Cannabis Therapy podcast. Check it out on YouTube, subscribe, like it, and even if you don't like that friend, send it to them also, because maybe they will start using cannabis and they become cooler. Who knows? Peace out.
Before you plead, call me Attorney Michael Komorn.
Dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan, dirty Dan, dirty goddamn dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan, dirty Dan, dirty goddamn dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan. There we go. See, that's my vision of the song. I gotta have. See, Amanda was supposed to catch on and be my female, off-key female vocal in the background, going dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan, dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan. Yes.
Hey everyone, it's Amanda here with PGT News, sponsored by Komorn Law. We're outside of the Washtenaw County Jail right now, where we've got a group of protesters gathering the brutal attack and arrest of the Grady L. family, particularly Shatina. And we're here to ask some questions as to what brings people to this location today and what they'd like to communicate to everyone.
My name is Tony Brown. Can you hear me okay? My name is Tony Brown. I'm an Ann Arbor resident.
And so what brings you here today?
Well, what brings me here today is a lot of things. I'm here for social justice. But the main thing I'm here is to let the people of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw community know it's not about color. You know, this is just another ploy in the system to divide us. But first, we don't know all the facts on this case. So we need to stand together and demand the facts. What are the true facts, okay? Why is a woman being beaten down in her front yard? Is she defending herself? We don't know. So that's one reason I'm here. I want to know the facts. I'm tired of governments and cities running people over. That's another reason. It's time to stand up. I'm here for my people as a voice. I'm also here to tell people, and any voice that will listen, July 7th, 2020 is Blackout 2020. Do your homework. The hashtag is Blackout 2020. We're not going to spend any money. We're not going to use any electricity. We're going to try to stay off social media. We're going to try to live self-sufficient without spending a dime into the system, without putting a dime into the system. Just back in the 60s, when we didn't ride their buses, we want to have the same impact on one day, just to test the system, to let them know we're here. Because we work. We're hard-working taxpayers, American citizens, just like everybody else. And we don't deserve to be beaten, and we deserve transparency in government at all levels.
Hey folks, I'm here with Trammell, and we're at the Washtenaw County Jail where we have a group of folks that are protesting. And Trammell, what brings you here today?
For support. Definitely the injustice within the justice system and the way everybody's lives matter to me. And it shouldn't just be, no matter what the reason is, everyone should be treated fairly and equal. This is supposed to be the land of the free, so we should have the opportunity to express ourselves and be who we are without being put into a label or, you know, in that type of way. It's just, I'm just here for support, love, and stand our ground. Like, we need that in the fight for our rights.
Absolutely, thank you. And are you a resident of Ypsilanti?
Yes, my whole life. Yes, I'm a resident of Washtenaw County. Been here 30 years. My whole family been here their whole life. So yes, we have been a resident for many years.
So let me ask you this: in your experience as being a resident, what do you notice what is a typical interaction with a police officer?
Oh, great question. Where do I start? How much time do you have? It's never really an equal balance. Definitely with the citizens of African American descent and the officers. Definitely with Pittsfield Township, with Ypsilanti Township, now it's Washtenaw Township. Like, I think a lot of these officers needs to have a psych evaluation before they become an officer, before they get their badge, because a lot of them comes from military backgrounds, army backgrounds, and racist backgrounds where that they shouldn't even be on that force or on the force to be doing their job that they're doing. And it makes it hard for people, the citizens, it make them uncomfortable because they can't live their lives, everyday lives, regardless of their background, whatever the case may be or whatever they're doing, but it still should be a protocol where justice is met at a certain level.
Folks, this is Amanda from PGT TV reporting from the Washtenaw County Jail here in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And as you can see, we have a great group of people, large group of people gathered here protesting the police and the lack of interaction with people in a positive way. And quite frankly, people are tired of it. And most recently, we had a situation in Ypsilanti Township where Mr. and Mrs. Grady L. were arrested and brutalized. And this is sparking some of the controversy today. Back to you, Michael. This is Amanda Joslin reporting live with PGT TV. We are at the Lansing State Capitol today, and as you can see behind me, we have a group of protesters, and they're protesting Governor Whitmer's stay-at-home order. So we are here as a neutral party. We're just going to come on through here and check out why people are here and what they've got to say to the governor. Hey folks, it's Amanda with PGT TV, and we're here at the Capitol where there are protesters protesting Governor Whitmer's stay-home order. And as far as the police presence, we don't see an overwhelming amount. However, there are a few. We see some over here to the left-hand side of me. There's a few to the right, and then there's some over to the, I'd say maybe 3 o'clock region. But other than that, everything seems to be extremely cordial. There are some police presence behind the Capitol doors to just secure the entrance. No one is able to get in or out. The crowds are fairly light today, but we have received a lot of folks that are very open and willing to have a conversation about the reasons they're here and any messages they may have for the governor. Stay tuned, and we're going to be broadcasting live tonight, 8 o'clock.
And now back to more Planet Green Trees.
All righty, we are back. Thank you for staying with us and watching Planet Green Trees. Appreciate the commentary we see on the side here, but we are now going to turn to Amanda Joslin, who will forever be now referred to as Planet Green Tree #1 reporter. You may have seen the segment that was videoed earlier where she was at the Capitol today, social distancing and interviewing people to try to understand what was going on there today. And she's now going to report on that. Please welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. we went over to the Capitol today. It was their third protest, and we were there a little bit later because there was quite a bit of rain earlier on the day. So there was probably a couple of dozen folks there when we arrived. There was a pretty decent, not a huge presence of police. Everybody seemed to be fine and peaceful. And we got a great group of people to talk to, just to kind of understand a little bit more about why they felt it necessary to go and how this pandemic has, and stay-at-home order specifically, has affected them, whether it be that they're a small business or whether it be that they've had to put off surgeries, just different things like that. And it was there were a mix of both sides. There was a side that was pro stay at home, and there was a side that was let's go back to work. But everyone that we spoke to was very respectful, and we were really just there to kind of get a feel for what was out there.
It seemed like it lasted all day. I saw some live footage via one of the news stations, then I saw a couple live feeds on people's Facebook. But it seemed like there was like traffic going by. It wasn't clogged like the couple rallies ago. A lot of horn honking. How many people would you estimate were out in front? You can kind of see it from the video footage that you guys shot, but how many people would you say were at the, generally speaking?
While we were there, Michael, we got there after the rain kind of stopped. So maybe about 12:30, and there were, I would say, about 100 people total. But that was including law enforcement and things like that. So 100 people total. There were still people driving around honking and things, but the main crowd was up closer toward the Capitol. There were a couple of folks talking on the loudspeakers and such. And it was not as a big of a turnout as what we've seen in the previous protests, partially because of the thunderstorms, I believe. But while I was there, there wasn't any, we didn't see any swastikas or anything like that.
What about arrests? Were there any arrests? I did see there was one scuffle that appeared, and someone seemed to either cause a fight or offend somebody and got kind of beat up a little bit and then ran away. Was there any arrests?
I did not see any. I can't speak to exactly what happened at that particular incident. I think I know what you're referencing. Somebody did create a little bit of a ruckus. And so turned out that he was ejected. And I don't know that he was arrested. I think he was just escorted off by another one of the protesters. I don't believe the police got involved.
All right, so with that being said, let's turn to our guests who we're very happy to have with us tonight. We've got Samantha and Jeff from the Depot Town Care Center. And if I understand, things have been licensed for both medical and recreational. Amanda was there recently, and we've got a video we're going to show a little bit about
Do we want to go to the Amanda report real quick? And
Yeah.
Okay, we can do the Amanda report real quick and then come back so people can see and understand, visualize the place that we will be speaking about of Samantha and Jeff's. But are we able to pull it off, Dan?
You guys like that sound?
Hey, Jeff.
Hey everyone, it's Amanda with the Amanda Report, sponsored by Komorn Law and aired on Planet Green Trees. We are in Depot Town in beautiful Ypsilanti, and we're here at the Depot Town Care Center, and we're about to go inside and see what they have to offer. Are you ready to be awe-inspired? Let's go. Depot Town Care Center?
So we've been here since 2011. We received our medical license in 2018, and we just recently received our recreational license. So we have lots of restaurants. We have Aubrey's, Sidetrack, Maze, the Wax Bar, and we're also right near Riverside Park and Frog Island Park.
So during this debacle and this pandemic, Sam, what kinds of things does Depot Town Care Center do to keep patients safe?
So we have extensive cleaning procedures in between each patient and customer. We have a thermometer that takes your temperature before you even walk in the door. Everyone's required to wear a mask for entry, and our bud tenders wear gloves, masks, and sanitize to keep everyone safe. If you don't feel comfortable coming in to make your purchase, you can always make a purchase online or over the phone, and we do curbside pickup.
So I see you've got a couple of products out here to show us. Can you explain some of these things?
Yes, first we have the Mary's Medicinals Topical. It's a 1-to-1. It has 300 milligrams of CBD, 300 milligrams of THC. This one is really awesome because it actually goes 10 derma layers deep. So it actually goes straight to the joint, straight into the muscle. So it's fast acting and it's very, very efficient. Next, here's the garlic cookies flower, which is an indica dominant. This one is testing at roughly 28% THC. This is definitely a top seller. Next, we also have the Wana gummies, which is a really hot seller. They're available in hybrid, sativa, and 1-to-1. They come in 10 milligram pieces. Very
tasty.
Yes.
Good. So tell us again how we can find more information about the Depot Town Care Center.
So you can find us on our website at depottowncarecenter.com, along with our menu on beat maps, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Depot Town Care Center.
Well, thank you so much, Sam, for having us here, and you have a beautiful facility.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Amanda with the Amanda Report, sponsored by Komorn Law and aired on Planet Green Trees.
So, thank you guys,
That was awesome.
Sam and Jeff.
What a gorgeous looking place. Very exciting. I hope people get a chance to get up there. First of all, welcome you guys, to Samantha and Jeff, for joining us tonight. It's always interesting to see the minds and operators behind these facilities and whatnot, and I'm glad that we were able to get the video so we could put it all together and people could see what it is. You know, a lot of people still have not been experiencing retail centers yet, and they still may be relying on a caregiver or on some other market, but we have some folks here live and with us to talk and discuss this reality that you can go to a store and actually buy marijuana, both for with your medical card or as an adult if you're over the age of 21.
Driver's license.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for joining us. And did you ever think you'd be on a radio show talking about your legal marijuana license business or podcast, whatever this is?
They need to unmute them.
No.
Things have moved very fast, haven't they? It's kind of crazy that, especially since you've been open since 2011. Obviously, you've been one of the, there since 2011, you've seen all sides of the environment in terms of its, the risk of criminalizing and forfeiture and all the stuff that went along with it, and the challenges of converting that principle to a licensed facility through the MMFLA, which is very, very challenging. And they were seemingly, not. Who would have thought that anyone that was open before they licensed facilities would get a license, right? That's kind of a miracle. And then of course you've gotten your recreational license, which is fantastic. So, first of all, have you been enjoying? Has it been worth the struggle? How about that one? Is that a good question? Has it been worth the struggle to get here for operating all these years?
Yeah, definitely.
It has been a lifelong dream.
Very good, very good. All right, so what generally speaking, it's obviously you've gone through a lot of the newness of this created marketplace, and there's obviously challenges because you've got a highly regulated market, much different than the caregiver market, et cetera. How are things going? Do you find, I mean, now that you have the recreational license, do you find that the supply and demand issue that has been there, is it kind of, are we getting past that? Are you able to, do you think people are, seeking retail places more now because of that, or less because of that, the prices, for example, or is the caregiver market still drawing patients away?
Give us the scoop. What are your challenges?
At times, I think prices for retail customers are shocking at times because the prices are much higher, including the 16% sales tax and things like that. The supply chain is definitely getting bigger, but prices are still so high that, I know our patients and our customers would like to see those go down, hopefully at some point.